Good evening, livelings. The chronicle continues. Because for several days I could not tell anybody about my dilemma and Terry's health, I befriended the nurses. I came and went so many times a day, and I was at the hospital so much that I got to know them, even though they were on different shifts and that sort of thing. And on this day, it was announced that they were ready to give Terry his first dose of chemotherapy. Now you can imagine how I felt about that, knowing what I've told you in the story so far. I had never been around anyone who had had chemotherapy or was going to get chemotherapy. I didn't know what that process looked like or anything. I was very ignorant in that department. And when the surgeon said that if they tried to give Terry chemotherapy, it would shut his organs down, to me, that meant, I guess in my mind, he would die immediately. His heart would stop, or he wouldn't be able to breathe. I mean, I didn't know what that meant and how imminent his death would be after they administered chemotherapy. So I was freaking out, to say the least. And I remember going out to the nurses' station and just venting, ranting. Why are they doing this? Why doesn't the surgeon say something? This is going to kill him. And they were really good. They put my fears to rest and said, no, he's not going to just drop dead when they start the chemotherapy. It'll be okay. And they reassured me that wasn't going to happen. But that was about all they could do. So they came in, and I didn't realize it was just pretty much hooking up an IV bag full of the chemicals and just doing a slow drip that would take a few hours. That was the extent. And I guess they were doing a mild administering of chemotherapy, just to see how he would handle it and how he would do. But they thought it had been long enough, enough days, that they could do this treatment on him, even though it had only been not even a week since his surgery. So they started the chemotherapy. And they said it'd be a few hours. They hooked him up. And I sat there with him, asking him how he was feeling. And again, I had no idea what any of that looked like, if he could feel anything. I just had no clue, no clue. And he was like, no, I don't feel anything. No. I was like, oh, cool. I'm glad. But I was watching him like a hawk. And the nurses would come in and they would take a draw out of his, he had an IV, so they didn't have to poke him. They could take his blood without poking him. So they would draw it out of the IV. And they would come in about every 15 minutes and draw blood out. And then after an hour, they came in and unhooked him from the IV, from the chemotherapy. And I said, I thought you said it was going to take hours. And they pulled me out in the hallway and they said the reason they draw blood is they look at the numbers. And I guess they can see how the liver's handling it. And again, I still don't, even though I've been through this, I still don't know all the details and nuances. But basically, what was happening was exactly what the surgeon said was going to happen. His organs were starting to shut down, and they had to stop the chemotherapy. And they could tell that through the blood draws. I was so pissed. I was so angry that they put him through that we had to spend that money, that he was a science experiment. I just can't even tell you. But exactly what the surgeon said would happen, happened. His liver started to shut down. His liver couldn't take it. So they stopped the chemotherapy and they came in and they said, you know, we'll try again in a couple of weeks. But right now you're just not quite strong enough. And that was the end of that. The good news is he didn't drop dead. The nurses were right. So that fear was waylaid. And because he had such a small amount, there were no repercussions. But they came in constantly checking his blood until everything calmed down and his organs started operating as best they could under the situation. But at least they weren't shutting down anymore. Boy, I just don't know. I don't know what to say about all that. 10 years later, I still don't know what to say about all that, other than it was awful. It was truly awful. That's today's Daily Chronicle. I'll see you tomorrow.